Thank you very much. I see the pointer is working. Do you think I can risk taking this out? I like to move around. Can I risk it? I don't want to break stuff. You know, I'm from the Free State. I can't pay when I break. Right. Okay. Don't worry. I'm not going to burst into song. Right. Thank you so much. Prof. Roxana, I think it's the first time I'm in the Senate. Right? Yes, it's very swank. Um, uh, I'm going to get emotional. This place played a wonderful role in my life. And just listening to you, I don't get enough chance because you're just opening stuff all the time. But as always, thought-provoking and a privilege. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite, Gerrit. I have a very soft place for Wits in my heart. So it's great to talk to you. I'm going to move through quite a lot of things. For those of you that are busy with some urgent emails and so on, I've got bad news. There is going to be about a total of 6 minutes of activities throughout, but you'll see why I do that. By way of introduction, right, so let's get our timing right. So my disciplinary background is psychology. I'm a registered counseling psychologist, and I did my PhD in social psychology. As a first year, second generation student, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So of course I did BA General, most fantastic degree on the planet. So the humanities have a very important place in my cognition. As a professional in this space, you cannot do this work if you don't think in a multidisciplinary way. And I'll try to illustrate through my presentation why some of the things we've been able to do, the humanities have an incredibly deep place. People tend to box our work, but I hope through illustration to show you that there's actually a massive amount of thinking that we do on a continuous basis. So I'm going to start with confronting some assumptions. And why I do that, if you want the theory, it's cognitive dissonance theory by Leo Festinger. It's an old theory. He did it to understand how people could do what they did in the concentration camps during the Second World War. And cognitive dissonance is basically when there's discomfort between your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitudes, and that creates a space for behavioral change and attitudinal change, right? So this is data from the University of the Free State. For those of you that don't know, it has about 40,000 students, 3 campuses, 2 in Bloemfontein, 1 in Kwakwa. Kwakwa is by far the most beautiful because of its surroundings. It's part of how Wakanda was created by the Bladed Affair. Golden Gate was all blended into one to create that space. They sometimes refer to themselves as the Wakanda campus. That campus hasn't had water for 2 weeks. The municipality has imploded, but the campus has a microgrid and 2 million liters of water because we sunk 7 boreholes, right? So that's what you have in the University of the Free State. So look at the data. If first time entering students by race, we can now claim that we have a very representative profile of the demographics in South Africa and also our region, right? If you look at our BUSI stats, the beginning university survey stats, 83% of our students are first gen. 2/3 of them are quintile 1 to 3. There's more quintile 1 to 3 students on the Kwakwa campus than there is on Bloem. And then, as on the rest of the planet, females are the dominant group. African females are the dominant group in all our faculties. Right, morning, right? Okay, so you'll see what the role of these statistics are as we continue, because this is data and evidence, right? So we're talking about data-driven, evidence-based change. As a psychologist, maybe and this university played no small part in it, but mainly my history at the University of the Free State, in which I grew up because my father worked there, my mother, and so on. But our preconceptions, biases, and prejudices need to be confronted. And you need to create spaces where you can get a way in, right? Because many of the issues highlighted by Prof. Osman has very robust networks behind it that creates cultures that perpetually make certain people feel excluded, even though they are the majority, right? How you should behave as a student. But you have to confront that by affirming with your lecturers the challenge in front of them. And let's go a little bit further with data, right? Oh, my question is gone. So are we operating on PDF? Sibongile, looks to me like it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll work with it. 70% of our students are on NSFAS, right? That means you have 50 Rand a day for food. Who knew that? Who knew that? Right? So we started in 2007 already with dietetics. We study our students. They are our dietetics department's main community, because if you could look there, 83% of them at some point are hungry. Sometimes, some of them most days. So why is that an important and affirming statistic for a lecturer? Because if Fizile starts nodding off, and I prepared incredibly hard to teach her elasticity, and she's nodding off, that my first assumption is not she's lazy. She partied too much, right? That we affirm and empower through data. There you can see, and for those of you that thought only Free Staters go to the University of the Free State, only 36% of our students come from the Free State now. We get a lot of students from rural KwaZulu-Natal. They're mainly in the Kwakwa campus, and then also Gauteng. So thank you for supplying us with students. Then there are 250,000 applications for 8,100 places. Nursing for 100 places, 29,000 applications. So the sentence in blue, you've got incredibly motivated individuals, right, that deserve nothing less than the best equitable opportunity for success, right? So just the last piece, we use this graphic to train our new staff in CTL, all academics, all leaders, because we want them to be confronted about how they think. And this goes deep, again, psychologically. At the core is your assumption, whether you're an academic staff developer, a leader of a university, that if you've made it in, you need to slog through it to earn that degree, regardless of what the university is like. Because if you do, you've got an equality mindset. And it's incredibly cruel. You make as if you're not living in the most unequal country on the planet. You make as if being hungry, 80%, you made a bad choice. You're sitting next to Fazile, so I'm gonna, that, your name? Innocent. Not that innocent. Okay. Innocent is hungry, does not matter. You will master sociological, the functionalist school, right? Regardless of what your life is like. And then always the old chestnut is, when we were here, we didn't have any of these supports. I had to do it on my own. Really? Serious? Right? Because that's not actually the case. If you think carefully back to your own experience, the sophistication that we have today is wonderful, but the challenges our students face are very, very different and very, very complex, right? So do you think as part of a team, and this might sound trite, that's very difficult in higher education institutions, especially competitive ones, which they all are by definition, because research, unless you are forced to work in teams because the problem is so complex and you publish together. And sometimes I think the natural scientists are there ahead of other disciplines because they have to publish together. Medicine also, right? Or health sciences. So that identity of I am going to be promoted or be recognized because I have published so much is an individual identity, right? But to tackle student success, you have to work in networks. So Adriana Kazar is one of the most beautiful minds in higher education on the planet. She's at the Pallias School at the University of South California. And I've used an older quote of her. She's a brilliant thinker. Think at scale. Now, some of you will not say, oh, that scale thing is definitely part of the new liberal agenda. If you want to use massification as a word, you can use that, right? I think South Africa has got giantification, but I'm sure other developing countries will say, you think your first year class is last in psychology, come and see ours. But that's a developing country realistic state. And then universal design we'll talk about. I just need to watch my time very carefully. Right, while the slide comes up, where have I put my stuff? Is it up yet? Nope. There we go. Right, so I'm going to introduce to you as part of the nurturing and holistic approach. I'm going to share with you a graphic. Some of us like graphics and we're going to work through that. But what's very important is for us, it's about transforming the learning experience. It's continuous. It is collaborative. It is a fantastically innovative space to work. Being in this space is where we are now with technology and how we understand learning from neuroscience, cognitive science is amazing. And then the additional challenge of how we help a larger group of people with less resources. And how do we do that effectively? And thankfully, we've got technology to help us with some aspects of it, not everything. Right. So if we go into the curriculum, I'm going to talk about two aspects. I'm going to talk about the curriculum renewal program and our graduate attribute work. The curriculum renewal program is arguably the most successful program we've had. We have academics at the university for 6 months versus 20 years, and they all do the same thing. They go back to their department and they say, you have to do this thing, right? We started work on it in 2019 with the University of Virginia, and because it's one of the most successful things they've ever done. So I'll talk a little bit about its assumptions. So let's talk some learning theory, shall we? The two graphics which you're going to see is David Krathwohl's sort of revised Bloom's taxonomy, right? And many of you will know that. Please don't nod off if you're in teaching and learning, because it's been used forever. But we very intentionally decided to go for the model on the right, which is Lee thinks model for significant learning. All right. So why did we do that? Because and this is a decolonial statement, we chose Fink. Fink did not choose us. We were looking for a model that's incredibly well structured and ordered, but creates space for us to bring in our context. So on the right, you will see foundational knowledge, application, integration, which speaks mainly to Bloom, right? But on the left is some of the things Prof. Roxana started talking about, right? The holistic experience. Every discipline. How do I relate to another chemist? Because if you're going to work on serious problems, you're going to have to talk to another chemist. Not often, but you're going to have to talk to them, right? How do I understand myself? What does green chemistry look like? What can I not do, right? Caring, my feelings about my subjects, my interest in what's important to me. And I don't have to tell you that human and caring starts creating a different space for Ubuntu, right? It doesn't give Ubuntu permission, it creates a space, right? My ideal would be that we have something, and you can use different terms, and then the all-important metacognition, right? Learning how to learn. Because if you think about your learning experience, even though you'll say students have so much support today, what you got out of your degrees is metacognition, right? You learned how you learn, you developed the confidence to build neural networks when it was difficult, right? So that's the theoretical assumption. Our graduate attribute work, I want to share with you there. Again, at the time, we looked at all the models. We looked global north, global south. Simon Barry was the leader in graduate attribute work in 2018-19. And then we chose the American Association for Colleges and University model. Why? We chose them, but coincidentally, it's now used everywhere in the global south, this approach, for the three core assumptions. Look at the arrows. An assist-based narrative about students and their knowledges. It's another affirmation of a decolonial commitment. You come in here and innocent, what you know, I value. And I'm going to use it, right? The second principle, intentional curriculum design. Not habitual, not I know my discipline, how I learned it in 1980 is obviously the way you need to learn it in 2024, right? Intentional design that's assessment driven and evidence-based. Because if assessment is the cornerstone of quality. Quality stands and falls at assessment. And we had a very particular and a challenging but exciting moment with AI about assessment. But your attributes, you can't claim. When we looked at Barry's work at the time, wish lists about a Wits graduate is this, a Free State graduate is that, and you can't show evidence, is simply not good enough for external stakeholders, right? And I'm not invalidating the academics' knowledge and identity. Our environment has changed. And that identity has got a massive contribution to make to a new context, but it has to change, right? So you have to create the dissonance. It's not comfortable. People don't like it. I was overhearing people, can't remember who, that was saying change is difficult. It's because your thoughts and attitudes and beliefs are getting confronted, right? You're not supposed to be comfortable. If you're comfortable in university, you must ask for your money back, right? It's a place that should help you to question. And then the last one, which sounds commonsensical, but that students need practice. And it sounds, if you want to develop graduate attributes properly, you need to intentionally design that attribute from the first year through to final year. Let's take the 3 undergraduate research attributes we benchmarked with the University of Adelaide at the time, right? You don't learn to write. If you had an academic literacy course in first year, and then the first time you need to write something cohesively, you do that in honors, right? It is incredibly cruel to do that to somebody. It borders on negligence. You need practice. And I'm not making a moral statement. I'm making a statement of scientific fact. You do not learn things if you don't build the neural network. And that neural network needs to be reinforced with practice. So that's the theory that underpins us. Of course, we put the discipline in the center. Bolt-ons do not work. That's old news. And we designed some new ones, and the newest is the digital skills. Let's see. If I go into the next things, I'm now going to give you a little bit more insight around the CRP and how it's constructed. We've done some curricular work. Now we're going into the academics staff development space. And now you can get ready. If you can type fast, that's fine. Otherwise, grab your little Wits bookie you just got for the conference. Do not write on the table like some students. It's an expensive table, this one, right? So you're going to do a little bit of activities. But before I get there, this is the CRP. In terms of curriculum design, Unit 2, 3, and 4 is backward design by Wiggins. That is outcomes, assessment, learning activities in that order, not the constructive alignment argument, right, of outcomes, learning activity, then assessment. Outcomes and assessment very close. Unit 5, and throughout the DNA of this is the graduate attributes and decolonization. So when an academic sits for 5 days, you come in, you do nothing else. By the end of that 5 days, you've designed your syllabus. It's integrated, contextualized, and you just need to implement the thing. But I'm going to talk about Unit 1 mostly. And Unit 1 is about centering learning. And why are we centering learning? Because at a university, students learn through learning and teaching. How do academics learn? How do academics learn? Research. Yes. So the nexus is there. This ridiculous competition between research and teaching and learning, and the one is on one planet and the one on another, does not exist, right? If you want to be a very mediocre teacher, you don't do research, right? So we put there learning, and I'll give you examples now as we work through it. But what's very important is we then bring in motivational theory. And this is not a new motivational theory, but the expectancy value theory we bring in, and I'll show you examples of where we get that. So let's start off with Unit 1. So in Unit 1, we have got the following objectives. You can see there. And now try to remember the stats I showed you, because we use exactly the same stats to create dissonance, but also affirmation. My class is difficult because my class is more diverse than it's ever been in the history of higher education, right? That is affirmation, being student-centered, putting students, for us, we put learning at the center, is not a statement of being negative about staff. It's at its core about recognizing what they have to deal with, right? Yeah, let's do the theory some more. So this book, this is a new version, 8 research-based principles for smart teaching. The previous one was 7. I just took out of chapter 4. This is the value expectancy theory. And if you wanted a nice grid to understand your students, if I have chemistry, if I value passing my chemistry course because I'm a BSc student, but I don't see it as something where I am going to succeed at, plus I experience WITS or the University of the Free State or UP or UJ as unsupportive, guess what? I'm going to feel hopeless. If you want me to rebel, to do well in chemistry, because I was good at it at school, so I want to be successful, it's important to me, but you don't care as a lecturer. The way I experience your interaction with me is one of condescension, or at its deepest core, quintile 1 to 3 people don't belong here. They just don't. And that core assumption, psychology tells you, comes out in everything you do. You don't have to say a word. It is just how I look at you. And then I will become defiant. Right? So this is some of the theory. You can look at it on your own. Right. First assignment. All 3 of these questions have the following parameters. Write as fast as you can, no pausing, no editing, and it doesn't matter if it's silly. Question 1, remember the best university teacher you had? What did they do to help you learn? You've got 60 seconds. Very fast. Ten seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Psychologically, I'll tell you why we're doing it this way. Next question. What would be the highest compliment anybody can give you about your teaching? 60 seconds, go. Tanya, you're thinking too long. Type, type, type. No collaboration, internal networks only. Right. 10 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Next question. What do you hope students will say when you retire? 60 seconds. Ten seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Right. So in psychology, why we force you is if you rethink, you start to move further away from the original assumption, right? So that's why we prime you in this way. Sure. Okay. Right. The next one is a little bit different. You're going to have to work faster, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to write the sentence in black in 30 seconds, right? If that comes up, write that sentence in black for 30 seconds. Course design is the single most important activity we engage in to improve student learning. 30 seconds, go. People done? You're done with your pencils if you're done typing. You actually can't type this one. You have to write it. But I should have said that in the instructions. Bad instructional design, sorry. Now, yeah, thank you for helping. Now change hands and write exactly the same sentence. 30 seconds, go. Four, three, two, one, stop. These are three examples of how we model in the CRP active and experiential learning. So on each three of those questions, I could ask you, what did that teacher do? Was it the command and the confidence they exuded? Give me some examples. The teacher that had a big influence on your life. Just give me some examples. Relatable, passionate, patient and encouraging. Free, free, like intellectually in his expression, right? Interesting how nobody has made a single disciplinary comment yet. contextually relevant example for development psych, right? So we would reflect on each of them. But let me come to the last one. Can you see the title? If you don't know what universal design for learning is, it's designing curricula in a way for the margins, neurodiversity, disability, because if you design for the margins, you include everybody, right? What did you just experience? I mean, you had to switch hands. You can't, right? Difficulty. What does it feel like? University of the Free State, stats coming back. 7% of our students are first language speakers of English. That means 93% of them are functioning as second, third, or fourth language. It makes what I'm doing now the worst way that they're going to build a network like Gerard suggested, right? You have to think about what is this like, and it's not a deficit view of students. It's because, oh, how dare he say that? It's just the cards they come with. You have no clue what your students went through to sit in your class, what they go through every single day to sit in your class on time, if they're quintile 1 to 3, right? Experiential exercises to make the abstract concrete but personal, right? Right. So I'm going to talk about something which Wits has participated in for quite a while. It's been a while since you participated in this. It's the classroom survey of student engagement. Staff and students do a survey. We created shortened versions of it, but it's about connection and understanding. And I hope that you can see throughout my presentation, the way we design staff student interventions is about deep understanding and connecting with another human being. Whether technology mediates that or not is almost on the side, right? You cannot teach if you don't understand. I cannot work with you as an academic if I don't deeply understand your reality and take it seriously. So here we use data, and we're back to data, to just see what students are doing and what a lecturer thinks is important in a module or a course, right? And what we do then is we just put that in a quadrant analysis, and we see not what the lecturer is doing bad or how the students are being lazy. We just see how are they missing each other in a course. In chemistry, where the success rates are problematic or the pass rates, how are we missing each other? And you can see an example here. And we've built a massive website with techniques and interventions you can use to address the different things. But you'll see there's an example here of the top quadrant where what you focus on, the red one, is these are things I want my students to value. But I see from the analysis, they're not doing that. So what does that look like in real life? And you'll see there's an example that comes up where the lecturer says, I want my students to engage in different viewpoints in my course, right? Whether that course is racially more homogeneous is irrelevant because of the diversity in your class, right? But if you look there, they must include diverse perspectives, and they're not doing that. And we'll just focus on that one thing, right? Why is that not happening? Or my students are not making class notes, right? We deal with that in your course at scale. Do we do it through teaching them OneNote and how to use OneNote? They have their phones with them. They might not have money if you have 50 Rand for food to buy pens and paper. They might process differently because They are all the time, their learning is mediated through a device. So many questions that we could ask, and that's just another example of in the academic development space, if you go back to data, it can create a different conversation, right, between the academic and colleagues. Now, the high impact practices, many people have seen this work. I'm going to talk about it very fast because I'm sensitive to time. What we've done at the university is we've been able to, our strategic plan made student success the #1 strategic priority. CTL played a facilitating role in coordinating high impact practices at scale. These are things when a student engages in them, especially students from underserved backgrounds, it creates integrative learning experiences. So Gerrit again gave the example of tutorials. We have UFSS. On Thursday, I heard UJ now has UJ 101. Our course was called UFS 101, but that's about a decade ago. Ours is now UFS, University of the Free State Success Skills. Academic advising, academic language and literacy work, tutorials, and e-portfolios and capstone. That's what we've scaled, and I'll show you numbers, but I want to talk about UFSS. So UFSS is one of the most researched courses at the university. Its curriculum is adapted continuously, and it's focused, and if you now go back, on starting students with the right skills and reinforcing them, right? So it's mandatory, everybody has to take it, and yes, and it's in addition to your curriculum. It's not part of, right? 16 courses, but we have a very well-researched delivery mode. We have winter and summer schools because students can't fit in regular classes. And then the learning is reinforced digitally, right? So the delivery methods, first, success skills reinforced second semester after most first years have a difficult first semester. And then we focus on strategic things such as career psychology, which many of our students didn't have. Many first years want to change their courses, and we help them to think carefully through the consequences if you have a NSFAS loan that you have to finish in N+1, right? So we did some research on, does this thing actually have impact on success? What we found was that participating in UFSS is 25 times a 25 times better predictor. So it's an extremely strong predictor of your chances to be retained, right? So that looks at your end of your first year marks, and it's 20 times more predictive than quintile or AP score. So statistically, this is as close as you get to a level playing field for the first year, right? So at least we can optimize and maximize our students' retention from year 1 to year 2. And I can tell you about CTL, and you can ask questions. Our configuration is different to most other places in the country, and how we think about how students get involved in student success work. This is what I mean by scaling. So this is a comparison of the last sort of 9 years. It's actually from Siyapumelela when that started in 2014. But you can see academic advising is a little bit different. We started with 2,000 and now we're advising per year 29,000 students, right? And you would think we've got an army, and the University of the Free State has only got academic advisors. That's if you were thinking in a very specific model. We took the American academic advising model and we deeply contextualized it for where we are. So you get academic advice in UFSS, one of the modules, career counseling is that. You get academic advice through a chatbot, and we'll talk about that in a second. Group advising, peer advising. We have faculty advisors, because this actually helps with your FTE loading. And if your FTE load is optimal, then your subsidy is optimal. If your FTE loading, if students take too many subjects, you are subsidizing, your costs are too high. If they take too few, then you're not optimizing your subsidy income. So advising is actually very critical. So our chatbot, they decided to call it Lenny. I'm not going to make comments about that. 5 million messages in June this year alone. There was 86,000 interactions. The majority of that data, or 40% of that data, is actually school pupils interacting with the university already. You can see a 99.5% help request resolution rate. That means in 99.5% of the times the students interacted, they got helped. But then we created GPS at UFS. Is about 42,000 handoffs. 5 minutes, I'll move quickly. So in terms of what we do, we run a algorithm that has flags. If there's flags that you trigger, we phone you. We identify 2,500 students every 2 weeks, and we phone them and reach out to them. We've, in the last 24 months, reached 15,000 of them. And we just say, how are you doing? We're not saying you're at risk, right? We ask them, how are you doing? And then we refer them, and we see a 5% difference in the rate of their pass rates. The last component which I'll go through is then the co-curricular space. This is where the team idea, we developed the digital skills framework. I can talk in detail about this at scale for our students to participate in. Our career development, we're also scaling. In COVID, our careers network with employers suffered massively. So in the last 24 months, we built that out by 473%. There's a standard pathway you can go through now as a student. And why the things that I've talked about, and then I'll have the summative slide. We have been able to narrow the achievement gap in the last decade. We've been working a little bit more than a decade on it, but from 15 to 7%. I think you can see the retention between extended and main. That's UFSS contributing their very deep design, 88% retention rate between first and second year. And if I were to give some summative reflections for you, if you look at the Time article or front page there, we do live in a very challenging space. I believe we're the bridge builders between those two realities. So for the University of the Free State, quality learning and teaching, or teaching and learning, is a powerful act of promoting social justice. Data and evidence enhances understanding and connection. Data is not an end in itself. Data is about the people, right? Collaboratively designing, whether it's with staff, with students working together. Your context does give you the edge. When I was here, Witz's slogan was, Wits gives you the edge. It's very, very important that you remember where you are and the amazing talent you have around you to work with. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You will not make a dent without it. You do need each other. The problem is too difficult. And the last two quotes, I often use the one about us going far together. But I think Madiba's example, when people feel, well, Wits has always been siloed, we don't work together, it's never going to get better. Take inspiration from somebody that didn't give up for 27 years. Thank you.